What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtonette. In today's episode, I'm going over the conference championship action and also giving my thoughts on the college football playoff rankings. But before I do, if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. Starting things out, Cam Scata Boom. Arizona State wins the Big 12 championship behind the standout running back and their young head coach, Kenny Dillingham. Kind of reminiscent of Cody Schrader last year at Missouri, an overlooked, D2 or FCS prospect. Last couple years, Cam Scata was at Sacramento State, and he is able to get the transfer to Arizona State, and boy, has he gone off this season. He hasn't quite done what Ashton Jeanty has done at Boise State, but he's had an incredible season, and I think it kind of shows shades of that. He had a big game against Iowa State, really ran all over the Cyclones, and sent Arizona State to the college football playoff. Another kind of key thing, this game really got out of hand in the second half. Sam Leavitt picked up a couple of key runs. There was especially a fourth down kind of early in the third quarter when this game was still up in the air. The quarterback for the Sun Devils made a couple big plays. So they punched their college football playoff ticket. Quarterfinal opponent, whoever that is going to have their hands full trying to stop them. And they were actually huge beneficiaries of, I would say, probably Georgia beating Texas, and maybe even more so Clemson beating SMU, because instead of getting that 12 spot, which is where they were slated behind both of those two potential conference champions, I guess more so the Clemson result, they're able to bump up then into that 4 seed, and they will be on a bye for the first round. Mentioned Ashton Jeanty quickly going over the Friday night action. I think Arizona State is probably the biggest story with conference championship weekend. Ashton Jeanty and Boise State kind of bucked the running Rebels, the Broncos did. Spencer Danielson, awesome quotes. I believe that's the Boise State head coach. Said after the game, he just kind of gave all credit to Jesus, and he said that Jesus was raised from the dead, and so that makes anything possible. So it's awesome to see a coach with that platform, or any player or anybody in that position kind of use that platform for that. So that was awesome. I also saw somewhere, I'll have to verify whether this is true, that he baptized Jeanty earlier this season. If that is true, that's awesome. That's incredible, and what a story for this Boise State team. I think a lot of people going into the season knew that they could be in that territory of getting that group of 5 highest-ranked conference championship bid, but instead of ranking all the way down at 12, they have soared in the rankings, skyrocketed really, to where they are the number 3 seed. They get a first-round bye, and then they'll be playing a college football playoff quarterfinal game with a chance to go to the semifinals or the Final Four, however you want to bill it. So huge for Boise State. Congrats to the Broncos. In the SEC championship, the Dogs digged deep. They showed some Georgia toughness in a 22-19 overtime win over Texas. Carson Beck went out with an arm injury, came back later in the game for one final play with his right arm completely limp at his side. Gunnar Stockton stepped in brilliantly for Georgia in this game. It wasn't an offensive showcase. I think both of these teams showed just how good their defenses are. But he stepped in, played admirably, played really well, and then he had to go out for the final play in overtime, or what proved to be the final play, after picking up a big first down and getting his helmet popped off on a big hit by, I believe, Andrew Mukaba was the safety from Texas who made that hit. Also, talking point there, I think that was the right call. No targeting there. It was a hard hit. It looked really bad, but he didn't lead with the crown of his helmet. He didn't make contact to the helmet, I think, directly. Kind of just popped right with the shoulder pads, and it made the helmet go flying off. So anyways, talking about that toughness, Stockton comes in, then he has to go out, and Beck, again, with that arm totally limp at his side, comes in for that play, and all he has to do, I mean, not to minimize it, his elbow injury was enough that he couldn't really, bend his elbow or do anything with it. He hands off to Trevor Etienne, who himself had missed the last 3 games, and he had a huge game in his return, 16 rushes, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown from a couple yards out to seal the Dogs' SEC title. After an 8 overtime game against Georgia Tech, this team, I'm sure, was exhausted by the end of another game that went the distance, that was close. every play being vitally important. You think especially at the line of scrimmage where those guys are going at it for, 4 quarters in back-to-back weeks and then 8 overtimes. Yes, the third through 8th overtimes were just one play, but still, that is physically and mentally exhausting. So big-time credit for Georgia. They will get the number 2 overall seed and a bye, which is something that will benefit them, as Kirby Smart said, taking a dig at Greg Sankey for their schedule. I'd have to look over it. I think they've had a fairly tough schedule this year, but I don't know how warranted that was. Maybe the way that they were on the road for a lot of those big games, like at Ole Miss. They were at Texas earlier, so I think that probably is a little bit fair for Kirby, but definitely probably a little bit salty after that schedule this year. Another story, Clemson wins their 8th ACC title in 10 years, and they are going to the playoff for the 7th time in the CFP era. Something also that was awesome, first of all, Dabo, as always, giving credit to Jesus after the win. That was awesome to see. But then he also advocated for SMU's playoff case, because this was a hard-fought game for the Mustangs. They fought back from 17 down, and they showed, I think, that they stack up well. I mean, their only other loss this season was to a 10-win BYU team that themselves just missed out on getting to the Big 12 championship game. So SMU showed they're a great team, that they stack up against the best. But game-winning field goal here by Nolan Hauser, who is a Clemson legacy. His dad was a member of a Clemson College World Series team, and his mom was, I believe, an All-American soccer player for the Tigers. So a lot of history there. He gets the game-winning kick. Great call by Sean McDonough on, I think, ABC. Phenomenal call there. And they do both get into the college football playoff. Clemson gets in as that last conference champion of the top 5 conference champions. They're the 12 seed. They'll head to Texas. Something else Dabo said was he's excited to meet Matthew McConaughey. I thought that was funny. And then, is it the right decision to put in SMU ahead of Alabama, who misses out on the playoffs in a rare situation here? I think it was. It's not all about wins and losses, but I think it's also about the quality. SMU doesn't so much have probably the quality win that Alabama has, but they have played a Power 4 conference. Yes, the ACC is probably the weakest out of the conferences, but they play that, and their only 2 losses are to a pair of teams that both actually now have 10 wins, won a conference champion. So I think they deserve to get there. I think if Alabama looked better against Oklahoma, they would have honestly had a better case. But because they got drilled by Oklahoma and they showed that they can have not just 1, not just 2, but 3 bad weeks, showed that they're probably not the well-rounded team like SMU is that can play good week in and week out and get to this situation. So I think that was the right call. Quickly, one other conference championship game that factored into this race. Oregon holds off a Penn State rally. The Ducks were up by 18, I think, kind of early in the start of the fourth quarter. Then they also went up 15, and they were up by 15 with about 4 minutes left. Penn State made an effort to come back. They even had a chance to go down and tie the game. Drew Aller had a pass, I think, on 4th down. That was picked off along the sideline, and Oregon holds on for the win in the Big Ten championship. So they win first year in the conference, and they will hold on to that number 1 rating. The Nittany Lions are going to be hosting SMU. I think that's a really interesting matchup. I think they both have a good mix of offense and defense. I think the defensive battle favors Penn State. Offensively, probably a little bit more even, but I'll get into that matchup. I'll be previewing each of the first-round playoff games individually rather than one big video, so stay tuned for that. Looking over those first-round matchups, though, my first inclination, these are not my final projections. They probably will stay this way, but this is how I'm thinking so far. I think Texas wins over Clemson in Austin. I think Ohio State beats Tennessee, as long as they don't fall into the same trap as they did against Michigan. Tennessee does not have a high-quality offense. They have the potential, but consistency is not there. So I think that's a win. Penn State, I think, also does get the win over SMU. And my first inclination, I'll have to look in this matchup a little bit more, is I think the one road team to win could be Indiana. I think Curt Cignetti, he was on CBS's halftime show, or maybe it was before or after the Big Ten championship, kind of talking about how where they were ranked and everything was not befitting, not worthy to what they accomplished this year. So I think that could be motivating. I think they can have a pretty good crowd. I've been to a game at Notre Dame where they played Cincinnati, and there was a lot of Bearcat red in that stadium. So I think Indiana, in their home state, not their home stadium, but their home state, can certainly invade South Bend. So those are kind of some of my thoughts. A couple of other shout-outs I want to give to Parker Navarro and Ohio winning the MAC championship. I spent a semester actually at a branch campus, my first semester of college. So shout out Bobcats, OU, oh yeah. Tough thing, weird, Tim Albin leaving for Charlotte. I would not call that a step up. Maybe he just wants a different challenge or couldn't come to agreement on an extension or whatever. We'll probably find out more in the coming days, but that's kind of something that's interesting there. But that's all for this episode of College Football Talk. I have a lot more coming, previewing the college football playoff, but thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.